Welcome to Level with Emily Reese. This is a conversation with composer Andrew Prahlow for Outer Wilds, Echoes of the Eye, The Lost Reels. So let me back up for a minute and explain to you all of that. Outer Wilds is a game that came out in 2019. It's adorable and beautiful and charming and wonderful, heart-wrenching story about a universe that's stuck in a time loop, and you're trying to figure out why and what's happening. And you travel around space in this little spaceship, and you're using a signal scope to track down your friends out in the universe based on what piece of music they're playing, what part in this one song they're playing. It's amazing. So that's Outer Wilds. That came out in 2019. They released an expansion in 2021 called Echoes of the Eye, and it's a huge expansion. So just like they made basically a whole other game to tack on to Outer Wilds, Andrew made a whole new soundtrack for this massive expansion to Outer Wilds called Echoes of the Eye. Now, over the course of all of this has been 9 years at this point, up to 2021, that this team has been working on Outer Wilds and living in that universe. And when it all ended, Andrew was bummed out. He's like, I want this to continue. And so he wrote another set of tracks he calls The Lost Reels. And these tracks are basically his fanfic to the game. So it's not for the expansion, it's music about the expansion and about the experience of, by the time it released, 10 years of Andrew working on these characters and in this world musically. So it's very intimate and beautiful and introspective, thoughtful, and all the tracks segue into each other so you can absorb it as one giant chunk of music, and that's absolutely amazing. It's really worth a listen. So that's what we talked to about. Of course, you won't hear any of that in this video version. You've got to listen to the podcast if you want to hear the musical samples. And there are a lot of musical samples. I think I use one track 6 times in a row over the course of a part of our conversation. That's not very common. At most, I'll usually do 2 or 3 in a row before moving on to a different track. But this is all to say, it's well worth your time to check out the podcast version as well. And you can do that wherever you get your podcasts. Please give a subscription here to the YouTube channel. That'd be great. That'll get you, or make sure you get your notifications, all that stuff when we put up new videos. Also, if you are able to join us as a patron on Patreon, that would be fabulous. Please do so. If not out of love for the show, then for any one of the perks that we offer patrons, you can learn more at patreon.com/level. I can't believe I almost forgot that for a minute there. Patreon.com/level. It's been that way for a while. So there's that. And then Discord as well. You'll find the link down in the show notes for our Discord server. And come in, join the conversation. It doesn't cost to hop in and talk about this episode or any other episode that you've heard here on Level. All right. Well, thanks for being here. I am so grateful that I got to chat with Andrew about these wonderful set of tracks that he composed. Outer Wilds, Echoes of the Eye, The Lost Reels. Here's Andrew.
Right. So Outer Wilds, Echoes of the Eye, released roughly a year ago. And then The Lost Reels are essentially what I did with the Steam release of the original Outer Wilds was I did a reprise, kind of a personal reflection and for the community about how the music feels to me, looking back on it. And for The Lost Reels, I did essentially the same thing I did with the reprise, but I wrote a whole record within the record, essentially. So how you find the DLC within the game, like the sequel to the game is built in the game itself. Like I basically wrote a record that is a reflection of the Echoes of the Eye soundtrack that comes after the original soundtrack ends. So it's like this huge deluxe edition album with all these new reflective pieces on it where I could kind of just take things where I hadn't yet in the game and kind of just look back on it all this time later and just share it with everyone. It was really inspiring to finally look back on this, since when I finished The Lost Reels, or when I finished Echoes of the Eye, it was like losing a bunch of friends. The characters in the game felt like friends to me at that point because I had been working on this game for a decade. So it was, I mean, bittersweet, but really wonderful to have another chance to come back and spend some time with them again.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've loved so much about listening to it is that it's deeply personal and it's literally music for music's sake, right? You weren't writing this for the game. This is like how you feel about this experience you've had, and that comes through. And I found that like really, really moving.
Exactly. Thanks so much for picking up on that. That's, I mean, what I wanted to communicate, and putting together the concept for it. It was very overwhelming in the beginning, and I wasn't sure exactly how to approach it and share those emotions with everyone. But luckily, over time, like I was able to kind of piece this all together, because I wanted to feel cohesive, and I wanted all the tracks to kind of connect. So it's like this one huge piece.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some of the segues are just so brilliant, and we'll get into that because it definitely deserves like pensive, attentive listening. I think, you know, I mean, a lot of game music does, but you know, with the understanding that game music again supports the game and has this very special role within the game, and you can sit and listen to it by itself, but there's always just a little something missing. And so that's what, again, is so nice about, you know, these bonus tracks, for lack of a better way to describe them, is that they really are worthy of just like sitting down and just listening. And, you know, for someone who I'm fairly familiar with the original soundtrack, you know, it was really beautiful to see how you wove themes in and the instruments you chose to play them on, and again, just the segues between tracks and all of that. It just seems like you thought a lot about it.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah. Like the one thing that was fun was right when I finished the record as well, I jumped on a call with Alex Beecham, the creative director of Outer Wilds, and he works over at Mobius Digital, and I'd kind of told him about the soundtrack beforehand, but over time, like I wanted to like share it with him at the end so we could kind of experience it as a listener, which is something that we weren't able to really do. You can't really do that when you're developing the game, but I wanted to just share it with them as just like a big thank you for all the time we've spent together on the game. And he helped me name all the tracks too, which was really fun because a lot of them they're sort of like mashups where I'm combining different parts of the game and how they connect in the game, rather than so it feels a lot more cohesive with kind of combining themes that you would hear in the game, but in different orders and in different ways to share how the Echoes of the Eye universe really connects, not only with itself, but with the original game as well.
Yeah, the Echoes of the Eye expansion is pretty large, right? I mean, considering the size of the original game, the expansion is a good size as well, right?
Yeah, it's it can take between, depending on how fast or slow you figure things out, it can be between 10 and 20 hours, so it's essentially almost as long as the original.
Yeah.
It was just we kept expanding and expanding it, so it's just like this huge, massive super planet hidden within the game. So it was really cool how they conceptualized it, and it turned into this whole huge project and a sequel, with all this extra lore added into the game, and like the new alien civilization that you wouldn't even know about if you only played the first one. Like it's this huge secret.
Yep. And I also notice, well, as did others, quite a tone shift too. It's a little creepier, isn't it? A much darker, scarier, in a way sadder, because of this alien civilization that you do find, right?
Right. Yeah. The way it was approached from the initial pitch that we were all talking about with one another was, if Outer Wilds itself is about the excitement and curiosity of space exploration, Echoes of the Eye is more of like a descent into madness and the exploration of the fear of the unknown in outer space. and it touches on cosmic horror and just like not knowing what you're actually getting yourself into. So it's like it gets away a little bit of some of the wonderment, but it also adds to the wonderment because you're like, oh wow, this is a lot bigger than I expected. This is something that I don't know what to think of what will happen next, which honestly in real life space exploration, it's the exact same way. Like NASA and everyone doesn't really know what we're going to find when we're doing all this stuff.
Right.
Like kind of treading into unknown territory. Like you never know. And that's what's so beautiful about the whole thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with that darker tone and kind of uncertainty, the music obviously reflects that. And, one of the things that I love is the ways in which you're also reflecting how important, audio signals are, right? With the signal scope.
Right.
I think that's what it's called. I tried to remember the name this time. Is it the signal scope?
Correct. Yep, it's
yes.
the signal scope.
Because last time I couldn't remember, and I was, oh God. But yeah, so the signal scope, you're chasing these, music in a lot of cases, but just frequencies of sound that you're hearing in outer space, and I love all the, effects that you use to kind of play with tuning a frequency on a radio as it kind of shifts around the dial, or maybe it's quarter tones or some kind of like intonation kind of shifting around, and just the searching of audio. Can you talk a little about that?
Right. Yeah. So in parallel to kind of, I wanted to treat, like I've been treating all the Outer Wilds albums as you can go back and kind of re-experience the game as you play through it, since you really can only go through this game once. Since once you know how to unlock the mysteries, there's no, like, you can go through and kind of replay it again, but it's like watching a film in a sense, where once you've seen it, you know what happens and you know what gets you from point A to point B. So with the first one, I did a lot of that frequency shifting, like kind of far away, closer, but it was like instruments that as a human being on Earth, you know what it is. So there's a lot of, it's like banjo, harmonica, acoustic guitar. And with that, I was hoping I could get the fan base excited enough to like learn these instruments themselves and like explore like becoming a musician and learning these tunes that all these travelers are playing. And then in Echoes of the Eye, I pushed that a little bit further to where the new traveler instrument is like I'm combining like a synth with this. I have this like slide guitar I found in Louisiana made out of this. It was in New Orleans, and I like to say it's like I know the door is from like the 1930s or 40s, but I've always joked that it's a haunted door that someone created this slide guitar out of. So I basically combined that with like my Moog synth to create this like weird theremin-y sounding, like creepy new instrument.
Nice.
With like some guitar loops behind it too. And visually we kind of were inspired by like a hurdy-gurdy type instrument, even though it doesn't sound fully like that. It's more of like a space hurdy-gurdy type thing. And then pushing that further, like since all these people got excited to play instruments from the first game, like I wanted to get players excited to like experiment with like otherworldly sounds or guitar effects or synthesizers or things that you can't necessarily put your finger on what the sound source is.
Yeah, definitely. And that's very true. But in these extra tracks that you made, sometimes you can tell what's happening, of course. And
right.
There's some really lovely string sections even that I really loved. And I swear to God, you bring back the kazoos at a certain point. Do you? Did you throw the kazoos in there?
I actually did not.
Okay.
I think I know which part you're talking about. Is it towards the end?
Yep.
Towards the very end?
Yeah.
So that is actually banjos, and I essentially played the main titles again 10 years later. Like I remade a new version of it, but the cool thing that I was able to do is my friend Jason Boulet builds these cool microphones out of he takes old telephones and he turns both the earpiece and the speaker into like an XLR mic. So I was
Cool.
hooking up this old telephone to like just kind of hanging it from a mic stand and recording it, since it's like these lost reels, these lost signals that it's almost as if the way I approached it was if us in real life were using a real signal scope or somehow we're able to find these Outer Wilds characters way out in the distance and sort of like us listening in on hearing this, picking it up. So I was
Yeah.
able to like, instead of mimicking like an old signal, I was able to like organically and create through this microphone, and I use that all over the score everywhere, like all over the Lost Reels everywhere. So it was like really fun to like get this old like tinny vintage sounding like broken
Yeah.
signal that I could bring back every now and then throughout the new pieces of music.
Nice. In the track that's called Lost Signal, I thought some of the rhythmic, like percussive sounds were interesting. And one of them to me sounded like, as someone who wears headphones a lot and is around microphones, it sounded like a mic hit. Like you had used like that as almost like a heartbeat rhythm or something. And so I'm curious what that sound was, because that really kind of perked my ears up a little.
Yeah, so actually that's pretty accurate. So that's really cool that you noticed that. I was recording my acoustic guitar, and when I set it down, I bumped the bottom of the mic stand, and it created this really weird rhythmic sound that also I kept listening back to it over and over because it sort of sounded like a voice or someone speaking or something weird in there. So I kind of just edited it to where it would be, I kind of changed the rhythm so that it would be in tempo, but I kept listening to it over and over again, and I was like, what, like, did it pick up an actual radio signal, or like what is it? Like, I don't know. It sounded like a weird human voice rhythmic thing.
Wow.
But I think it's just because it's like the scraping of the strings, and I think I was using a rubber bridge guitar on that part, so it's like a piezo pickup combined with like the amp pickup, creating this weird like static distortion thing. But yeah, I ended up like, I was like, this is a cool sound that I made on accident, but I was like, I got to do something with this because it's just so creepy.
Yeah, and it's weird too how, like you said, just how rhythmic it was, and then how that was really effective.
Thanks.
Yeah, and then I want to talk maybe in too much detail about River's End Times, because this was just such an effective track for so many reasons, and the segue at the end into the Spirit of Water is just really beautiful. But in River's End Times, it kind of starts off, and it's like reminiscent of the first game with the camping style, and like everybody's sitting around and making music,
Right.
regardless of if they're on the same planet or not. And so then this piano comes in, and again, it sounds like, growing up in the late 70s and 80s, it sounds like old car radio, like it's just not quite in tune. And each attack of the piano key gives it a little hiss, just like old style radio, not quite on the right frequency. Just the story of all of our childhoods who were alive then, right? And
Right.
I really loved that sound. And then when you remove that filter on it and the piano comes in really clearly, it's just so beautiful. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that section of it.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I was using that same the telephone mic again. Like, so I essentially
cool.
recorded that I recorded the piano part twice, and I kind of have it. The first time I played it, I was recording it through the telephone mic. So that was like, I kind of wanted it to feel like we're zoning in on the Nomai piano almost. But I'm using like some of the same techniques I recorded with the original Nomai piano, but I'm playing the theme of the River's End, but I play it on guitar in the game, but now I'm kind of bringing it to piano, so I was able to it's like doing this fun thing of like, we're getting jumbled signals and stuff is kind of mixed up because it's so far away, so it's like this thing that's normally played on an electric guitar is now played on a piano, and it kind of shares that. And it's like I wanted the piano just to hit full force once it's like we finally locked in our signal scope to that part of their universe.
Yeah, yeah. And then, not long after that very clear piano comes in, then these strings take over, and they're also kind of like sliding around and maintaining these really big open chords, but really tense, right? There's a lot of tension in that part. And I loved the way that kind of falls apart or morphs into the electric guitar playing the main theme. I loved that. So tell me about that transition there.
Thanks. Yeah. So later on is when the strings really hit full force. So I wanted to kind of use this as like a foreshadowing to the end of the record. So it's the same feeling of like it's just not quite there yet. Like we're still zoning in on that big string ending. So it's just I have like the violins, like I had them waver between pitches, while like a lot of the cellos and basses are like very straightforward, like right in tune. So it's able to create this like texture of a lot of how when you get dropped into Echoes of the Eye, like it can be unsettling once you start to explore the depths. So I wanted to reflect on that, and as we bring in, like, only in the game strings are at the very end to symbolize the new universe. So with this, it was cool because I'm reflecting on all of it. So I was able to touch base with these strings, with the string ensemble, to reprise and play themes that I hadn't been able to record in game because it didn't make sense in game. But now it does make sense with this record that I was able to create for the project.
Sure. Right. And again, I mentioned it before, that really lovely segue into the next track, The Spirit of Water, which is, very lush and beautiful and has really great motion to it. Do you want to say anything specific about The Spirit of Water? I really enjoyed that track.
I actually wasn't planning on doing it. It was towards the very end of me working on the record, and I was like, I really want to record a version of the Sound of Water, but with strings. So I essentially just notated it, and it's almost verbatim what the Sound of Water was, but for strings. And like it sounds very different because like instead of using the synths and stuff with the looping mechanic that's kind of going through the whole track, like on violin, it just sounded so beautiful. And then once I had figured that out, I was like, this might be like my favorite track on the record. Because it just kind of really hits on like the final ending, and it's like a reflection on the New Traveler, and without giving too much away, like what kind of where that heads. And like it's just it was really a joy to write that track, and it turned out really wonderful. I didn't know what to expect and how it would go, but just like the recording for that was just like a wonderful experience. And like that track still sits really close to me as one of my favorite things, especially because it's like it's so close to Echoes of the Eye, but it sounds so different.
Yeah. Were these string samples or real string ensemble?
I recorded some of my friends playing
cool.
cello and violin and stuff.
Okay.
So,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then I kind of just it was fun to work with them because I got to I was just recording them over and over and over and over to kind of create the ensemble out of a few players.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's brilliant.
And I was able to bring back David Tangney, who played cello on the first record, like many years ago. So it was cool to like have him back in, because he was really excited, and I wasn't sure how much strings I was going to record for the new record, but I called him and like I was like, hey man, like in a couple days, like I can put together a string session. Like I've been going through it, and I have the parts ready for you if you want to play. And he was like, yeah, of course. So got him in last second to like. So I was like, of all people, like I really wanted him to be on it because he's the only string player from the original Outer Wilds. So.
Oh, that's so cool. And he plays that really great. I can't remember is it called Morning, maybe, when he plays the Timber Hearth melody on his cello in the first soundtrack? Is that what it is? Morning? Do you
Correct.
remember?
Yeah, yeah, correct. Yeah, that's
love
him.
That.
Yep.
Well, and that
Thanks so
leads
much.
us really beautifully into Hearth Shadow, which is the next track, and has that opening, the Timber Hearth, but it's like electric guitar now instead of acoustic guitar, and it's a little slower, it's a little lower. So tell me about that.
So that was actually a really fun piece because I was able to finally record an official version of the extended Timber Hearth intro. Early in development, I had music playing through the entire planet on loop, but we found that over time, like, it felt just really nice for when it's nighttime to have nothing. So you're really able to like look up at the stars and reflect. And so I cut the original Timber Hearth down for time so that it would, right when the sun sets is when the piece ends, and then you wait through the night with silence until the sun starts to rise, then it hits off again. So I was able to use that theme for Timber Hearth, and the way that I approached that track was, it's like you're waking up on Timber Hearth, and you're heading for the first time, like, or after you discover how to unlock Echoes of the Eye, you head to that planet. So I wanted it to feel like taking off from Timber Hearth and slowly heading into the unknown and the scariness of what you are discovering in Echoes of the Eye. I wanted to do that like musically, so you can kind of, for those that have finished it, they can reflect on that part of the game when they really don't know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah. I loved all that really nice guitar playing. And again, that kind of disintegrates as well, right?
Right.
Yeah, that whole theme of like kind of the descent into madness, as you say in the, you mentioned earlier. Your music has gotten a lot of attention for being just as wonderful as it is, which is great, and congratulations on that. You recently won the Gang Award, the Game Audio Network Guild Award for Best Music for an Indie Game. And you and I are talking, let's see, it's Thursday, September 29th. Obviously, it won't air today, but shortly. And you just got some great news today. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. I got nominated for a Music and Sound Award today, so that was pretty exciting. And then on top of that, I'm doing a live concert on October 13th just to celebrate the release of Echoes of the Eye, The Lost Reels, and it's also like my first premiere of playing Outer Wilds to the public in general. And I love Lodge Room Highland Park. It's a venue that I've seen a lot of my favorite bands at. Cool. And it's just a nice place, and like they've had some really intimate shows there, so I'm more than excited to finally play this with the world, because Outer Wilds really blew up during COVID. So this is it's
really?
all kind of new to me and fresh to me, and it still doesn't feel fully real yet that we have such a large fan base. So it's exciting to kind of, just take a step back and put it into perspective and just celebrate the new music with everyone.
So tell me a little bit more about the show, like instrumentation. What's it gonna be like? And this is gonna be in LA? Correct. Yeah. But I'd love to know just a little bit more about the logistics of it and what it would be like to be there.
Right now, it's going to be myself, and then my friend Chris is coming out for it. He knows the music so well, and he's actually the person who gave me the original Outer Wilds banjo all these years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I still have like the original strings on it and everything. So he's coming out to play with me, because I was initially going to do a show for the first E3 that was canceled, to celebrate the vinyl release of Outer Wilds. So I had that set planned out with myself and David Tangney, and then Chris Fike was going to play guitar on it as well. But because that got canceled, I kind of had to do like just a live stream of the half-hour set that I had prepared. And now like my friend Jason Boulet, who built the mics, is also playing on this. And then hopefully David Tangney and some other string players. I'm putting it all together, and it's been just fun to kind of not only play the new music, but create these live versions of it. And it's going to be a different experience, but I'm approaching it as just like a personal show to thank everyone, and it'll be very similar to the live stream that I did for Summer Game Fest a couple years ago. But
cool.
Just touching on all the new music.
For people who live in that area, what's the best way for them to learn more or to seek out tickets or however that may play out?
They're on lodgeroomhlp.com, I believe. So if you look up Lodge Room Highland Park, they went up for sale like a few hours ago. So
oh wow,
it's been an exciting day. So I was doing working on promoting that like all the way up until this interview. So
oh nice. Cool. Well, oh man, makes me wish I could be out there. Certainly in October, it's going to be more pleasant there than here, I would imagine. But you never know. You never know. So yeah, well, congratulations on all of those things. And I know that now you've submitted this for the Grammys as well.
Correct. Yeah, this is the first year for the Grammys, including video game soundtracks as a whole. Mm-hmm. So it's been a very exciting past few months putting together this show and releasing the Lost Reels. And I just think it's wonderful for the video game music community in general that we're being recognized and the art form is really being pushed into the Grammy community. So it's just all around, I think, you can feel the excitement with game audio and like the excitement buzzing for this to be considered just a wonderful time and a celebration of that being included this year. So I think a lot of us are just so happy that they finally included it into the awards.
Yeah, it's overdue, but I'm glad as well that it's happening. You said that you've spent a decade on Outer Wilds and its various children. And, I know that you've worked on many other musical projects as well through that time. Have you felt the need to kind of decompress musically from any of those projects as well? Or is this kind of really just been Outer Wilds focused where you felt the need to do the reprise and then release these Lost Reels?
Yeah, I think just for the timeline's sake is what makes this so personal to me and such a big part of my life, because it really was like the one of the first things I ever started working on after grad school. Like my program was only a year long for grad school for the composition studio, but Alex's was like 2 or 3, I think. So I was assisting over at Nickelodeon on Legend of Korra for Jeremy Zuckerman when I started working on Outer Wilds. And it was my first kind of big, well, we didn't know it would be big at the time, but it was the first time where Alex and I were like, yeah, let's make this awesome game. It's going to be really cool. And he was pitching me all the concepts, and his sister, Kelsey Beecham, was writing it alongside with him. So, from the beginning, and then it's still going on a little bit. I thought we were done after Echoes of the Eye. I had no idea about this opportunity to do the Lost Reels and the live show and all this stuff now that COVID has been wrapping up a little bit. So it's just been great. Like that, and that's why it's so personal to me. It's like it's kind of hard to let go in some ways, to be like, oh, we're done. Outer Wilds the franchise is complete for now. So it's just like a weird feeling.
You had said that it kind of blew up during COVID, and I know that the gaming industry overall did fare rather well through that time for obvious reasons. So what is it about Outer Wilds that you think found an audience during COVID compared to all the other choices, right? I mean, like, what do you think drew people into that world?
I think the fact that everyone wanted a new world to explore while they were in lockdown. And that on top of like the kind of existentialism that the ending of the game touches on about what life really means. I think that was all in the back of our minds, whether we liked it or not, when like the tragedy was happening during lockdown. So it kind of was people could relate it to their actual life even more, and also could just know that there is something else out there when you're stuck in your house for so long, that there is going to be more to explore eventually. And it's kind of gives, I was hoping it would give people hope that we were all going to get through it together. So
yeah.
And then also just sharing the gift of music with others was another thing, because there were so many musicians just playing live streams online and doing all these cool little creative projects just to stay connected with everyone and to give everyone some hope. So personally, I think that's part of the reason why it connected with others, at least from the messages I've been receiving. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and two, there's something kind of metaphorical in that way about how all the musicians are scattered across the universe and playing remotely, right? They're like playing this song together, but scattered around the world, which is basically what we were dealing with in lockdown.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I remember, at the time I was hosting morning jazz radio, and, I would interview these musicians, and they're like, yeah, we're exploring all these ways to play together remotely, like hopping on Zoom. Well, that doesn't work because of delay. I mean, just talking to people about like all these ways to engage musically while being scattered around everywhere. So, yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think even like, because there have been some people that have recorded remotely with one another to play the Outer Wilds music, just like how it is in the game. So that's been really cool, and I think lockdown helped with that and pushed that premise, because why not? If you're sitting at home, like you're like, oh, there's a game where people are doing that in the game, so let's do that for fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, Andrew, other than this live concert and that's coming up, which is going to, I'm sure, occupy a lot of your time preparing for that, I mean, what else is going on for you other than all of these awards possibilities and such?
Yeah, nothing I can speak about yet. I know that's the boring answer, but
I'm very used to it by now.
Yeah, it's I was hoping I'd be able to talk about some of them, but I have to keep as much as I want to, I have to keep my mouth shut so I don't get in trouble. But the live show is what I'm really excited about, and that's coming up quick. So it's like about it's exactly 2 weeks away. So
okay. Oh my God, you're right. I can't even believe August is over already. So I'm just not ready for October, but it's fine.
The year's been flying by.
It really has. It really has. But Andrew, is there anything else you want to mention about this project or anything else you'd like to say?
I'm just so thankful for everyone reaching out to me. And it's gotten to the point where it's hard to respond all the time, because it went from like getting a couple messages every few weeks to now like multiple a day of people either covering the songs or just telling me that they finished the game for the first time and they're going back and reflecting on the music, or there's still people discovering the lost reels now, because it's been pretty frequently, and I feel like it's something where if you're following Outer Wilds, you know that it's been released, but if you're new to the game, because it just launched on PS5 a couple of weeks ago too, and the new Xbox, like they kind of gave it a little bit of an upgrade, so people are still playing it for the first time now, which is really great. The life of the game has really lived on with the staggered release we had over the past time. So it's been just wonderful as the community builds upon itself and more fan projects are released and people are modding the game and doing just all this crazy stuff to expand on the universe that they've fallen in love with in some ways.
It's awesome. It's an amazing game, and again, just really fell in love with that project you did with the Lost Reels. Really beautiful stuff. So I'm glad you did it, and I hope it was cathartic, I guess, for you, releasing for you to experience it like that.
It really was like, I really didn't feel like I was ready to be done at all after Echoes of the Eye released.
Yeah.
And this was a way to like kind of get it out of my system and say goodbye to Outer Wilds, and just be like I'm just very, very grateful that this project turned into what it is. I don't think any of us on the team expected this to happen, like in even our wildest imagination. Like we were just hoping people would want to play the game. We didn't know it would turn into this huge project that would kind of give us something even more to wrap our heads around after we finished the original title. So
yeah. Well, congrats on all the success. I know there's more coming for you, and very excited to hear whatever new projects you've got cooking on in the future. So thank you so much, Andrew.
Thanks so much for having me.